They shook my hand like I was a visiting consultant, not the man who wrote the first line of NovaForge. I watched Dominic's mouth move, but I wasn't listening. His words were just static behind the pulse pounding in my ears. The room was too clean, too rehearsed. Celeste sat near the glass wall, her gaze locked on the skyline, as if that view would shield her from guilt. The legal rep slid the severance package across the table like it was a gift. "This isn't personal, Jax. The board's restructuring to align with aggressive market trends. It's not just a revenge story, it's a playbook for anyone who's ever been underestimated. Aggressive. That was the word they used to cut out the architect of the entire system. I built the core engine, wrote every module from scratch in a studio apartment with no heat. They used my brain as scaffolding, and now they were peeling it off like tape. I didn't sign anything. Not right away." Dominic, standing by the window with that smug confidence, said, "You'll be credited as an early contributor. That holds weight." I smiled. Small, controlled. I had already memorized every term in the contract. Their legal team tried to bury Clause 8.7b, waiver of residual licensing, but they didn't expect me to actually read the appendix. They thought I'd be angry, explosive, that I'd burn the room down. But I was quiet, focused. That's what always scared them about me. I didn't shout. I watched. And when I moved, it wasn't emotional. It was deliberate. I slid the envelope back across the table. "You'll hear from my lawyer," I said simply, and left. Outside, the air tasted different, sharper. I took the elevator down 50 stories without blinking once. The next morning, I opened the locked archive folder on my personal drive. /failsafe/NovaForge. Original / inside were the source files they thought I had deleted. Versioned, time-stamped, attached to my name, not Helixar's. The trigger came 2 hours later. Aaron called. "I heard. Jesus, Jax. They blindsided you?" I didn't answer right away. Aaron used to work with me before Dominic poached her. I never blamed her for leaving. People move where the light shines brighter. But now the light was turning, and she was one of the few who knew what I had actually built. "They didn't just blindside me," I said. "They wiped my name from the repository. It's like I never existed." Aaron exhaled. "That's illegal. They're betting I won't fight back." She was quiet for a beat. Then, "Tell me what you need." I didn't need revenge. I needed control. Revenge is reactive. Control is systematic. That night, I installed a trace script onto one of the old dev environments I still had backdoor access to, one they forgot to revoke. I wasn't interested in their messages. I wanted logs, code pushes, infrastructure pings. I wanted to watch them move like lab rats in a maze I designed. They were pushing forward with the commercial clone of NovaForge, project name, Phoenix. Irony never escaped Dominic. He wanted a rising product without the man who lit the match. They thought I'd disappeared. They thought I was just licking my wounds. But I had spent 3 years building a weapon. And now they'd handed me the perfect battlefield. I wasn't supposed to be in the building that night, but my name still opened doors they thought were locked. The Helixer building looked different at night. Colder. Its sharp-edged glass caught the moonlight like a blade. I didn't park in the front lot. I walked from 2 blocks out, hoodie up, ID badge cloned, breathing even. Access logs wouldn't ping me. I'd designed the security stack myself and left in a ghost protocol, triggered only by a specific RFID sequence. They never found it, because they never looked for anything that wasn't theirs. I bypassed the main elevators, took the south stairwell, and entered through the side access of the 4th floor. No cameras in that corridor, another design flaw I'd pointed out months ago. They'd called it low risk. The office was empty except for the hum of machines and the soft blue glow of standby monitors. I moved quickly, straight to the dev wing. My old desk was cleared, sterile, like I'd never been there. But the system didn't lie. I sat, connected my drive, and opened the latest push logs to the Nova Forge repo, and there it was, a new contributor. User, crain_314, timestamp 2 days ago. Code insertions, minor tweaks to the telemetry layer, but not mine, not Helixar's. This was an outsider's hand trying to forge a signature. I cross-referenced the session IP. The login came from a virtual node off-site, masked. But someone had tried to replicate my original optimization sequences, poorly. They weren't just stealing my code. They were butchering it. I traced the encryption shell back to an alias I knew, Reed Morano, Dominic's new CTO, the guy they brought in 6 months ago to streamline after Helixar's Series C funding. He never understood the engine, just knew how to copy and paste and take credit loudly. It wasn't the betrayal that pissed me off. It was the incompetence. I copied the logs, full session playback, packet traces, everything. Then I rewrote a small subroutine, harmless on the surface, but laced with a signature string only I could recognize, a breadcrumb. By the time someone noticed, it'd be too late. I returned home before dawn. My apartment overlooked Palo Alto like a chessboard. Across the room, screens flickered to life. I ran a simulation on Phoenix using the stolen telemetry build, and it broke. Hard. Latency spiraled. Memory spikes breached safety thresholds. It was unstable. Dangerous, even. But they were going to demo this to Virion at the investor pitch next week, which meant they were gambling with tech they didn't understand, built on a foundation they no longer owned. And I had proof. Erin called again that afternoon. "You were right," she said. "I checked Reed's patch logs. He's using a mirrored branch from your deprecated repo. That's IP theft, Jax. I have it recorded." "Then why aren't we going public?" "Not yet," I said. "Let them hang themselves first. We need more than logs. We need outcome." Erin paused. "So what's the plan?" I stared at the monitor. The project schedule for Phoenix's demo was synced to a countdown clock. 6 days left. But I wasn't aiming for the demo. I was aiming for the moment right before. "They're deploying a staging server tomorrow," I said. "That's where we'll place the mine." That night, I began modifying Failsafe Protocol 9, a command sequence built into the original Nova Forge kernel, hidden in plain sight. No one ever activated it because no one knew it was there. It required 3 keys, mine, Erin's, and a third, from an admin account I'd created under a pseudonym before leaving. If Phoenix ran on top of my code, and it did, then the failsafe could bring it down. Not destructively, elegantly, silently. The system wouldn't crash. It would simply return null values on all major telemetry inputs. The dashboard would freeze mid-demo. The investors wouldn't see chaos. They'd see emptiness. Nothing is more terrifying in a live product than nothingness. I smiled. They were ready to show the world Phoenix. I was ready to show the world it didn't exist. The staging environment spun up at 2:14 a.m. Thursday. I was already watching. The system ID was clean, labeled as a sandbox clone of Phoenix, but the metadata told a different story. This wasn't just a test server. It was wired for a real-time demo pipeline. They were prepping a live environment, ready to go public with stolen architecture, and banking on no one knowing the difference. I tunneled in through the VPN I'd established 3 months ago during a maintenance audit, a gift they didn't realize they'd accepted. The server wasn't empty, not even close. There was a hidden directory buried under 3 layers of symbolic links. Inside, logs, compiled binaries, and a build labeled NF Prime. Nova Forge Prime. My original codename. They hadn't changed it, just dressed it up, injected UI layers, rewritten documentation, and pretended it was something new. But code doesn't lie. Not when you write like I do, leaving behind stylistic fingerprints in spacing, function call patterns, error string phrasing. I opened the telemetry module and found something worse, a call-out script to a third-party analytics firm in Singapore. The code was sending usage data outside the US without user consent. That was a violation of every compliance standard Helixar had pledged to follow. Phoenix wasn't just stolen, it was illegal. I downloaded everything, encrypted it, and pushed a backup to an off-grid node I owned under a burner identity. Then I called Erin. "I have the trigger," I said, "and the match." She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then, "How deep does it go?" "International data transfers, violations, and they know. That's why they're hiding the NF Prime tag." "You could bury them with this," she whispered. "We could," I corrected. "But first, we let them climb higher. More exposure. Then we cut the line." She paused. "You want them to sign the investors first." "Exactly. Then there's no walking it back. Public breach, legal liability, collapsed valuation." She breathed out. "I'll get the third key." That night, I returned to the one place I swore I wouldn't. Helixar's off-site storage vault. My admin account was still technically alive, masked as a dormant bot in their archive system. I used it to retrieve the last digital artifact tied to Nova Forge's foundation commit, a single-line hash signature embedded in the smart contract ledger. Once matched to my key and Erin's, it would complete the failsafe trigger. I encoded the key fragment on a cold wallet, embedded it into a secure QR code, and stashed it behind a fake back-end page on a startup I once mentored. No one would look there. I left no trace. Back at my apartment, I initiated the test, simulated the fail-safe deployment on a local clone of Phoenix. The result was perfect. The dashboard launched, the UI gleamed, and 30 seconds in, the values flatlined. No errors, just silence. The kind that makes investors sweat bullets. They wouldn't know what hit them. And Reed? Reed would be on stage, frozen, holding a product that couldn't answer back. They didn't just copy my code. They copied my name and left it in the smart contract. Hey, if you've ever had a toxic boss, hit that like button. You'll relate to this part. The investor demo was 2 days away, but the Helixar team was already in overdrive. I watched their rehearsal through a hidden stream I had set up weeks ago, routed through a compromised security camera, left online in a disconnected meeting room. They'd assigned the demo floor as restricted access, air-gapped the internal subnet, and loaded the Phoenix build onto a closed-loop system. None of it mattered. They were operating inside a box I had designed, and I still held the blueprint. Reed stood at the center of the room like a conductor, directing engineers and marketing leads, most of whom had no idea the engine they were praising was a fraud. "Phoenix loads in under 4 seconds now," he told the group, clicking through slides filled with numbers I'd fabricated 3 years ago to get early traction. "Investors will eat this up." He pointed to a data visualizer, a clean dashboard showcasing usage stats, uptime, and telemetry, all simulated from dummy data feeds. That entire layer was artificial. I'd built it that way to test interfaces. Now they were selling it as proof of product market fit. I recorded the rehearsal from start to finish. I didn't need the footage for court. I needed it for timing. They'd scheduled the demo to last 22 minutes. 15 minutes in, Reed would hit the telemetry screen. That's when the failsafe would trigger. Not too early, just late enough that investors would already be impressed, hooked, ready to write checks. Then everything would stop. They'd try to refresh. They'd blame the network. But it would be baked into the system. Silent. Undetectable. And no one on that stage would know why. Erin messaged me that night. "Third key secured. You ready?" I replied. "Failsafe deploys at T+900. Don't blink." She didn't answer with words, just a single dot. That was enough. While the Helixar team toasted champagne and updated pitch decks, I ran one final simulation. This time, I linked the failsafe to a cascade protocol. If triggered during the live demo, it wouldn't just freeze the dashboard. It would ping a time-stamped hash across a decentralized ledger network, public, immutable, proving that the code running on Phoenix was forked from NovaForge without license. The ledger record still had my cryptographic signature, the one they couldn't erase. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I deployed the final payload. Not the failsafe itself, just the trigger hooks, embedded into the Phoenix runtime as benign watchdog processes, invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. I encrypted the control key and sent half to Aaron. The other half I stored on a single-use drive sealed in a lead box behind a power panel in my kitchen. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. There's a difference. The next evening, I received an email from Reed's assistant. Accidental. CC'd from a forwarded investor thread. All systems greenlit. Phoenix is go. 15 minutes in, just as planned, Reed stood confidently beneath the overhead lights in the Helixar demo hall, a curated theater of polished steel, neon accents, and moneyed smiles. The Virion investors, 5 of them, sat in the front row with tablets on their laps and NDAs still warm from the printer. Reed was in full performance mode, firing off metrics, outlining projections, painting a future only fools or geniuses could imagine. Behind him, Phoenix shimmered across the LED wall, graphs alive, inputs dynamic, the illusion flawless. Then he tapped the remote and transitioned to the telemetry showcase, the so-called beating heart of the system. That's when it happened. The graphs stopped, not with an error, not with a beep, just stillness. Every real-time metric flatlined in perfect unison. The dashboard hung suspended, data cells inert. Reed hesitated, then clicked again. Nothing. He glanced toward the tech crew, who scrambled behind their control station. Murmurs rose. Aaron stood at the edge of the room, silent, unreadable. She knew the failsafe had activated. I watched it all remotely, the hidden stream feeding into my monitor like a live confession. The timing was surgical. Investors leaned forward. One of them asked, "Is this part of the simulation?" Reed opened his mouth but didn't answer. Because in that moment, the second protocol executed. The public ledger ping. A silent signal, dispatched to over 24 cryptographic witnesses across the decentralized network. The proof, code, hashes, timestamp, ownership signature, all locked into the chain. Uneditable, indisputable. The Phoenix engine had just exposed itself as a fraud. I didn't need to say a word. The system said it for me. And in the corner of the screen, behind Reed's frozen face, the last telemetry value ticked to 0. After the screen froze, everything slowed. You could almost hear the realization sink in, first in the eyes, then the posture. Reed stopped gesturing. The Virion lead investor looked at his tablet again, then at the screen, then at Reed. The room held its breath, suspended in corporate discomfort. Aaron didn't move. She didn't need to. The signal had already gone out. 20 minutes after the failsafe triggered, a mirrored dashboard appeared on the open-source proof ledger, a complete copy of the Phoenix demo feed, paired with cryptographic evidence of its source code origin. My origin. Within minutes, 3 developers on GitHub recognized the NovaForge tags. Someone on Twitter posted a side-by-side code comparison. A tech blogger caught wind. By the time the Helixar team escorted the Virion investors to a side room to clarify technical inconsistencies, half the valley had already seen the breach. The demo didn't fail because of a bug. It failed because someone pressed pause on a stolen symphony and forced everyone to notice it wasn't original. I didn't gloat. That wasn't the point. This was never about revenge. It was about proof. I received an email at 10:04 p.m. that night from Dominic himself. Subject line, "We need to talk." I didn't reply. 36 hours later, Helixar's official Twitter account posted a vague statement about a technical irregularity during an internal demonstration. But it was too late. The damage wasn't just reputational, it was structural. Investors pulled out. Partners hesitated. Journalists circled. Within a week, a formal investigation began into IP misappropriation and export compliance violations. I made one public statement. Short, precise. I attached the hash ledger and timestamp proof. No commentary, just facts. Reed resigned 3 days later. Dominic's shares dropped by 28% before the board froze his voting rights. Helixar bled. Not because of sabotage, because the truth had a timestamp. 3 weeks after the fallout, Aaron and I met in a small bar in Cupertino. No press, no suits, just two people who had been silent long enough. "You never looked back," she said over the rim of her glass. "Looking back would have made me softer," I replied. She smiled. "And now?" I paused, watching a table of startup kids sketching diagrams on napkins. "Now, I build something they can't touch." She clinked her glass to mine. "Then don't leave a name this time." "I will," I said, "but they won't see it until it's too late." I stood up and slipped a drive across the table. Encrypted. Clean. A blueprint. Not for revenge, but for version 2. Justice doesn't always arrive loud, but when it lands, it stays. What began as silent betrayal ended with public reckoning. The empire built on stolen work didn't collapse in flames. It unraveled with precision, exposed by the very truth it tried to bury. Justice, though late, didn't knock. It entered like a code string no firewall could block. Like the final stroke in a signature long forgotten, the truth left a mark no power could erase. In a world run by systems and silence, the loudest victories are often the ones written in code. Thanks for watching. And to them, if you're seeing this, I'm not done yet.